Heartland Flags and Gifts presents Legends and Listeners with Scott Dochterman and Chad Leistikow. Fly 'em high and fly 'em proud. Find your flag at heartlandflags.com. Breaking down the Big Ten from the Channel Seed Studios, this is Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. Welcome to episode 24, Scott Dochterman of Legends and Listeners. What a week so far. It's only Thursday. We have rogue DCI agents, geofencing, a court storming controversy, a five-star left tackle in classes at Iowa, possible tampering involved in that, the departure of Jim Harbaugh from Michigan, the official arrival of new athletics director Beth Goetz at Iowa, but still no new offensive coordinator. We are live from the Channel Seed Studios here on the Iowa Everywhere Network. Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register here, as I mentioned, joined by Scott Dochterman of The Athletic. Scott, do you feel like you're working hard enough?
No, apparently I'm not. I don't think that, it's that simple as I was told, that the media is doing a good job. So I guess 24 hours a day isn't enough, right? No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to pretend that I work every hour of every day, but man, this has been a month this week.
Well, we teased a lot of topics, Scott, to start. We kind of agreed maybe to start with sports gambling just because that was a little bit of a bombshell this week, I guess, and we haven't talked about it much lately. We certainly haven't talked about it since our last show, so let's dive into it there. I know you have a piece up on The Athletic. Did it post last night or this morning? I read it, the latest on everything that's going on, basically how student athletes were ultimately targeted. It got to the answers of why Iowa, that it appears that there's an agent that was having fun with a geofencing toy, and geocaching. My son does geofencing, and decided to just snoop in on the Iowa athletics department to see if they were betting on sports, and that's kind of how this started.
Yeah, this is the danger of using geofencing and AI technology, Cabana, and to use it for snooping purposes, I suppose. And it turned out that it was, you talk about the Fourth Amendment rights here. When you need probable cause to start to go into these types of places to do these types of things with a warrant, and it didn't happen. And as one of the motions for the attorney for Iowa State defensive tackle Isaiah Lee, during depositions and during a filing for a motion for discovery, wrote that initially Brian Sanger, for Special Agent DCI, had initially targeted a freshman-sophomore dorm in Iowa City and was denied that opportunity. Then decided to use geofencing around Iowa football or Iowa sports facilities and found out some information. Same thing with Iowa State. That's why it was only those two schools. And ultimately, 111 students were found, to use gambling, whether it's underage or other opportunities. There were 26 athletes at Iowa. There were 15 at Iowa State who had their gambling habits, I guess, exposed. And from there, then and as also a part of that deposition, and this is a different motion from the attorney representing Panero Johnson at Iowa State, found that one of the special agents, Mark Ludwig, who actually did the interviews with Isaiah Lee, then soon afterwards discovered that no, this was that he obtained a confession and not just information, and decided to be reassigned from the case. This runs so much deeper than sports, Chad. It's so much more impactful. I mean, you're talking about a police agency at the state level using AI technology, geofencing to obtain information without probable cause, without a warrant, This could happen to anybody, anywhere, from the government's perspective, and ultimately, it's cost athletes their eligibility, and just to obtain mostly misdemeanors in the court of law that were adjudicated. So significant for a lot of sports, for a lot of athletes, and this case isn't going away anytime soon.
Yeah, good recap there. I had some of that in my notes to touch on. Certainly, you have covered The Athletic. We have several articles that register to that regard. But yeah, our world deals with the sports implications of it. What we do for what we're talking about is really, really disturbing, really significant, and I think that's where kind of where maybe the two conversations are kind of merging, but they sort of split at the same time. Scott, there's no question these athletes did gamble, and they're not supposed to gamble, even if it was one bet, and we know that. The punishments, we may agree, were too harsh, too outdated for certain things. Certainly the Noah Shannon case is kind of the poster child for that, how they strung him along. How they did that. Before. Even last night, the basketball game with the new athletics director. So I don't necessarily have problems with the consequences of their actions, but I think now all of a sudden, especially when you see the Tom Brand's comments from yesterday, it's like, well, our guys are ready to go, and it's not the same. I mean, they still gambled on Iowa sports, so I don't think that part is coming back, right?
Yeah. I mean, you look at it, I'll use an analogy. Let's say you were in high school and you had some marijuana and you had it in your drawer, and the cops come in your house unannounced and without reason and find it and arrest you for it. And then you tell your parents that you have marijuana and you're in trouble with them because you're not supposed to have it. Then it comes, whether it's in a court of law, all those charges get dropped. So that doesn't mean you're not in trouble with your parents for having marijuana, just because it didn't find out. And that's kind of the case here, that by telling the NCAA that all of these gambling issues, by reporting it, it doesn't mean that the gambling issues go away. The legal issues may change, but overall, the penalties from the NCAA are going to stick. I don't understand that you think that, that anybody would think that the NCAA is going to say, oh, well, all this information was obtained illegally, therefore it's going to go away. It's not. That's a different topic altogether. We can argue or discuss that the terms were unduly harsh for a lot of these athletes, gambling, whether it's Noah Shannon or the Iowa State, Hunter Deckers, any of those athletes gambling on their schools or on their teams. Yes, we can have that conversation as to what needs to happen. But I think overall, that's not going to go away. And then, for Tom Brands to, some of his comments yesterday, and directed a lot to me, but, across the board to the media for not doing our jobs and answering these questions. These are comments. This is testimony that came out in a court of law during a deposition. We don't have subpoena power to go to a DCI agent and say, now tell me exactly what you did here. You know what they're going to tell me? It's not going to start with a nice word. And most of the time it's been no comment every single time I've tried to do that. Now, I've gotten some background from some people. I have, police officers, one who shared with me his thoughts on what this is the case. And that's what I wanted to look into, but it's completely different. Me printing rumors or anything versus facts. This is facts. And it came out, maybe it didn't come out exactly when Tom Brands wanted it to come out or exactly how it came out, but it came out. And a media agency, Keith Murphy at WHO was the first to report it. We're writing stories about it, and he was upset that we asked for reaction, and then he's just going to shrug it off. I thought that was, there are a lot of things I think about that, and I'll probably reserve judgment here. But by and large, I think overall, this case, is going to be bigger than just sports. There's going to be a reshaped DCI, I think, at some point. And how high does this go? Does this go to to the governor's branch? Does this go to attorney general? Or do they say, no, it's not our problem, we didn't have anything to do with it? And and there is some governmental oversight. So anyway, Chad, I've gone on long enough. But anyway, it certainly is a major topic in the state, no question.
Yeah, this is an evolving story, Scott. We were never going to have all the answers right away, and like had people share like what they think happened, what they've heard happened, what and the agents aren't telling us like they were never going to talk about how they obtain this stuff, because obviously why would they?
Yeah.
And it took a high-priced lawyer or what? I mean, I'll assume presumably high attorney fees to get this information. We probably make a tenth of what Tom Brands does. I don't know. Yeah, maybe not. Some kind of that proportion. It's not. We don't. I don't have money to throw around to get a lawyer to look into it, nor does my newspaper. So, anyway, it is kind of. I don't like the idea of like public figures bashing the media, because that's such a for no reason, just because you're the media, so we all work hard. We all, I have bosses and you have bosses, and I feel like we've made good decisions on how we use our time. I don't think I waste my time. I definitely don't. So I take a little bit of exception to that, and I just don't like because he's going to say that, and then 95% of Iowa wrestling fans are going to not really look into the facts and think, yep, the media didn't do their job. Lazy media, at it again, just, eating their popcorn or whatever at the game. So I just kind of wanted to fight back on that just a little bit, because I thought that was a little bit unfair, especially, wrestling media is also a different culture of its own in a way. And it's just, I don't know. It's just, I didn't care for that very much.
Yeah, it is awfully self-serving, to suggest that we're not doing our jobs here, but then, the irony of then demanding the press conference flip to wrestling is kind of interesting at best. And I like Tom, known him a long, long time. Same thing with you. We've reported on different topics related to wrestling, and hell, let's face it, it's not like this last year hasn't been full of topics to write about and discuss when it comes to Iowa sports. Whether it's, maybe it's not as in the legal realm of this, but, and then to bash media. I mean, Chad, our business has been chopped and chopped and chopped and chopped and chopped for 20 years. The Wine Register where you work, the numbers of people who work there and can do the work have been trimmed immeasurably. And likewise, I have other things to write about as well. So to bash us for a story that ultimately came out in a court of law, I don't know what his point was. But that said, I'm happy that in his case, he was able to get his pound of flesh. I'm not sure it's going to do him any good. And I don't think that there's going to be, his nephew or any other wrestler who's been suspended by the NCAA is going to magically get their eligibility reinstated.
Yeah, like I said, evolving story, well said. I think eventually we'll get more athletes to talk. Right now, that's it's still an ongoing thing. There's legal ramifications. People don't talk during legal stuff. Got an official no comment from Kirk Ferentz this morning. Same from Noah Shannon. So, trying here. But I guess that's reaction, right? Sorry. Yeah. Well, Scott, we are in the Final Four of the NFL playoffs, and I know a lot of Kansas City Chiefs fans are out there pretty happy about the win the other night against the Buffalo Bills. And certainly there are a lot of Hawkeyes and Cyclones in key roles on the rosters of our NFC title game participants. So now is a perfect time for those of us in Iowa to visit our sponsor, Heartland Flags and Gifts, which offers free shipping anywhere in the U.S., always has new products, nearly every sport, every team, and every flag. Visit our good friends online at heartlandflags.com or in store at 3719 Southwest 9th Street in Des Moines. Man, I'm excited for these. Just a sidebar, I'm excited for these two conference championship matchups. Really intriguing. And then, of course, the NFC game with prominent Hawkeyes and Cyclones. Like, that's really going to be good theater on both sides.
Our friends at Reagan have that great T-shirt, Detroit Lions, and you have David Montgomery, and you have Sam Laporta, and you have Jack Campbell, and unfortunately Matt Nelson's on IR. But then on the other side, Brock Purdy and George Kittle. I mean, this is an Iowa State fan's dream matchup to see. I'm sure most people will hate to see a loser out of that, but I think it's going to be very exciting. Primetime Sunday night, and then on the other side, I think Kansas City is probably the most popular regional team remaining. Pat Mahomes, Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, and then there are prominent Iowa players with the Ravens and Tyler Linderbaum and Geno Stone. So this is overall, I think quite the matchups to watch on Sunday. Hopefully we don't get an OC during the games.
That's my only wish. I just got a message from you guys. My mic's not working great. Is it sounding okay right now?
It's fine now. Perfect now.
Fine now. Okay. Sorry, guys. For listeners that may have been disrupted by that. Oh, well. You didn't want to hear about my gripes about the media criticism anyway. Since our last show. What's that? It
was way in the very beginning.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Since our last show, Caden Proctor has become a Hawkeye Scott. He is on the roster internally in the football program. Can confirm. So he is a Hawkeye. Let's dig into a couple layers of that. First of all, there's a lot of excitement, Scott, about this. Let's get into the football part of it secondary. But certainly his quote from his media scrum the other day raised some red flags from Alabama fans in particular, where he said no bridges were burned. That's why it was easy for me to pick them when I did enter the transfer portal, because I had those relationships. Even when I was doing bad in the SEC, they hit me up and said, "We're proud of you." That got a lot of people riled up. Tampering accusations flying, Scott. When he said that to me, I thought it was regarding the Tyler Barnes tweets. That's what I thought he was talking about. I didn't necessarily think he directly hit him up. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. But that's what I thought, because Tyler had responded to a Mike Farrell tweet, who's a prominent recruiting analyst, about, hey, he's going to be fine. And I'm sure Caden saw that, right? I'm sure everyone said, hey, here's what Iowa said about you. To me, that's what I thought he meant. But I realize, there's a little can of worms opened here. What's your read on the situation?
I look at it through that vein. I went through and found Tyler's tweet and then retweet kind of over the top of that. I went through the likes that Tyler had, and there were, of course, quite a few. And both Caden's mother and himself liked that tweet. I thought it was a nice thing to do. And it's unfortunate it's been turned around like that. Now, I can understand the concern from Alabama. I mean, their statue coach, they've had two. That's really not fair, but they've had two. And Nick Saban retires, and then the floodgates open, and their starting left tackle, who's a true freshman, goes back to his home state, and there was contact made, and at least I can understand the anger and vitriol with that. But I think overall it's pretty. I think it's pretty minor, and I think, God forbid, that somebody actually has some uplifting comments towards somebody who's struggling and probably needs them. And if that's all it was that tweet, then I think they should be happy, if nothing else, that they're trying to help him move along, because I think Mike Farrell had mentioned that Iowa fans are probably happy he's struggling, and it's like, no, we're not. We want to see him succeed, and he's only been there a short period of time. I thought it was a good tweet, but overall, kudos to Caden for bringing up everything, and he was very eloquent in how he spoke the other day and explained the situation. I don't have any problems whatsoever. Do you, Chad?
Well, I mean, it's just, the rule is, let me read it from NCAA bylaw 13.113. Any athletic staff member or other representative of the institution's athletics interest shall not make contact with a student athlete of another four-year college institution directly or indirectly without first obtaining a written permission from the institution's athletic director. So, if there was any direct comment, any text messages of any kind, technically, yes, against the rules. Is it the spirit of the rule? You could argue probably both ways. This is this also there's another bylaw regarding the transfer exceptions in the NCAA bylaws, I guess 14.55210 in the one-time transfer exception says that for a person to transfer, the head coach of the certifying institution and the students shall certify that no athletic staff member or other representative of the institution's athletics interest communicated or made contact with the student athlete or any individual associated with the student directly or indirectly without first obtaining authorization through the notification of the transfer process. So he's on the team. So it's gone through. There hasn't been anything blocked. I think if there's anything, it could be a slap on the wrist potentially if there was contact. I would expect Iowa to be compliant and all that stuff. Or, if I'm sure Tyler Barnes feels terrible for even sending the tweet, or, if he did send a text even. But there's, I don't know. I just think there's not going to be much to it. I think it's going to blow over. Maybe there's a little minor slap on the wrist of some kind at most from the NCAA, but they're terrible at enforcing things anyway.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think Iowa has had enough of the NCAA for a little while. It'll probably get maybe they can play like a, get out of jail free card on this one.
It might be a situation where you turn it in as the most minor violation and then admonishment and, education, and move on. And I mean, that's really what it is. I saw Mike wrote a column kind of saying Iowa needs to get the book thrown at it.
That's what I mean.
And that's, come on, man. I mean, it's like everybody's doing it, but let's penalize Iowa, for the most innocent of encounters. In fact, a positive encounter. Now, if there's something like you have to turn in your phone and Tyler was blowing him up all year saying, come on, man, you got to come back home. We'll take care of you. Then that does demand some reaction, obviously. But if we're talking about a tweet that he's just trying to, and he didn't tag him on the tweet. It was just a quote tweet from Mike. And I think at that point, if that's the case, I don't think that's even worthy of the NCAA's time, frankly.
Yeah, concur. Let's talk football part of this, Scott, because we haven't talked about. We talked a little bit about if he comes, but man, what a huge deal, right? I mean, he's here for spring practice. He's here for whoever the offensive coordinator is. But do you think he is going to be a day one starter at left tackle? I have seen some pundits out there saying he should kick inside the guard. But I thought that was the silliest thing I read. And I felt it was like, I can't remember who it was from now. I wish I had it with me, but it was like somebody like notable. And I was like, really? Like, you're going to move him inside the guard at 6'7", 360 at Iowa?
Yeah. You know how I am about the NFL draft and the kick inside the guard talk. It drives me nuts. There was a lot of that with Tristan Wirfs too. Remember that? Oh, I think he could be an all-pro guard. Guess what? He's an all-pro tackle. And this year he just stuck behind Trent Williams, so it kind of sucked for him. But Caden Proctor is a left tackle, and Caden Proctor will play left tackle in college and probably in the pros at 6'7", 360 with that kind of length and that kind of feet and that kind of power. Iowa hasn't had that guy since Alaric Jackson. And what this does, Chad, in my eyes, is it completely reshuffles the offensive line to make it much more potent. And the reason why I say that is Mason Richmond was kind of out of position. He played left tackle because he was the best candidate for left tackle. He's the only one that could really do it. And he was injured last year and he struggled with it. He's a guard at the next level. And so if you flip him into, say, left guard, and you have Connor Colby at right guard, and Jennings Dunker, who I thought for the most part played pretty well. I thought he was ascending. He wasn't perfect by any stretch, and I think he may be a guard at the next level too, but that doesn't matter. You're talking about Big Ten. This offensive line looks a heck of a lot better automatically when you've got an elite left tackle ability, and you got somebody who started 14 games in the SEC, including a playoff game, and maybe his best game was against Georgia in the SEC championship, and he's only going to get better. I love the fact that he's going to be there for that, and this changes the offense from a run perspective immediately. And then you may have one of the best, if not the best, tight ends in the country returning from a broken leg, and another one who really took a lot of steps forward in Addison Ostrenga, to couple with 5 returning starters from last year. This offensive line, to me, and the ends could be high-level Big Ten this year.
Yeah, it's amazing what one guy can really do for your team. We saw that as Chicago Bears fans once they acquired Montez Sweat on the defensive line. They had no pass rush before. All of a sudden, pass rush, sacks, turnovers. I think they ended up leading the league in either interceptions or turnovers. And just one guy, one stud guy coming in and just he draws the attention. Other guys become better. Now, we're not saying Caden Proctor is a finished product yet, but I would say, I'm full agreement with you, left tackle. But I wanted to ask you this: do you think on the first spring depth chart will Caden be number 1 left tackle right out of the gate? They did that with Cade McNamara once he arrived, right?
I think so.
I think so too.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to try to pass this off as Eric Hall was on the depth chart. Nick Jackson wasn't at first, but this is a different age, and I think Mason Richmond understands the score. He knows what's going on, and I think he already knows. I've talked to his family about it and stuff. He's like, yeah, my short arms, I'm definitely going to be a guard. So it probably helps him in his career going forward. And so one guy, when you talk about the offensive line, if you have a player who looks like him and is built like him and can play like him after another spring of coaching and everything like that, it changes the dynamic in an immense way. It just reshuffles the deck to where, okay, wow, you just moved probably your most veteran offensive lineman inside, and he's going to become a pretty good guard, and the others are going to grow. Okay, now what's been a really kind of a weakness, and certainly was the last first 2 years, 2021 and 22. Now I'm looking at this going, this might be your strength on offense, and pretty good running backs, good tight ends. It's the other 2 positions in the OC that I think are the big question marks.
Yeah, no question. We are on day 87 of offensive coordinator watch, and I know a lot of fans out there would like to reach for a glass of Steeple Ridge bourbon to get them to the finish line here. Steeple Ridge delivers a high-quality, delicious drinking bourbon. If you don't find Steeple Ridge at your favorite retailer, ask for it by name. Steeple Ridge is distilled, aged, and bottled in Iowa by Lonely Oak Distillery. Scott, let's talk a little bit about that offensive coordinator search. One name to me has emerged more so in my reporting. I know others have actually reported this, or at least someone else did, 247 maybe as well. Kevin Johns, the former Duke offensive coordinator, has held that role at Indiana, Western Michigan, Texas Tech, Memphis, and, of course, Duke. I can confirm he's in the final mix, and I would put his odds at least even money that he will be Iowa's new OC. Far from a done deal, but I like a lot of the sounds of it. I think he would fit pretty well with Iowa. Do you have any early thoughts on a potential Kevin Johns era at OC for Kirk Ferentz?
There's a lot to like here. I think he's been at places where he's been exposed to a lot of different things. Northwestern, he was there. He was a passing game coordinator going all the way back to, he was on the field for when Ricky Stanzi got hurt, and then Dan Persa tore his Achilles on his touchdown pass to beat Iowa. But also with Kevin Wilson when Indiana started to get going. He was at Duke. He's with Mike Elko and Memphis with Mike Norvell. Now, a lot of people have come back and said, well, he didn't travel with them when they went to places. But you know what? Colin Klein is an ascending player, or coach, now. He was a great player, and he went to Texas A&M. That's a different type of dynamic. You can't just judge somebody on where they don't go with a head coach, because sometimes, as we know with Texas A&M, you're not in charge of anything with that program. They're in charge. But I like the way he's elevated, the teams in the passing game. I mean, when you look at Duke, from, season 1 to season 2, like the year before they got there, they were last in the ACC in scoring offense, total touchdowns, and passing touchdowns. And they went from that to fifth, and seventh. Everywhere he's gone, they've improved. And I think that's something. He's had really good running backs. He's had really good quarterbacks, and he's actually been a part of their growth. There's a lot to like there. And really at this point in this stage, though, Chad, there's not a lot of people out there that are just begging, me. We've talked about other candidates that didn't want to come. So I like this pick. What do you think? And you're looking at this.
Yeah, there's a lot that I like. I would call it solid. I haven't actually written the column yet, so I haven't jinxed anything. If anybody is hoping for that, I might at some point. But I do like that he has more of a pass game background. I think he, as you mentioned, he was the pass game coordinator for Northwestern. Kind of had what did you call it? A power spread, I guess, at Indiana. I mean, they had some good offenses.
Yeah.
There. I mean, I know Kevin Wilson was calling the plays, but 2014, Tevin Coleman was running all over Iowa. A 2015 Indiana team, I think people forget, was a really good team. Iowa had to do all it could. CJ Beathard had to jump over piles to win that game over in Indiana. And
Jordan Howard,
Nate Sudfeld. I believe that Indiana offense ranked 14th in the country that year. So, this is a guy that has numbers on his side. It's not like he's got experience, but it's not that great of experience. He's worked. Did you mention Cliff Kingsbury? He worked under Cliff Kingsbury, so he's got exposure to air raid. Cliff did call the plays at Texas Tech in his 1 year there, but they had a great offense. So, he didn't bring it down, and they had a good offense at Memphis in his 3 years there. Again, Mike Norvell was the coach the first year. Who was it? Silverfield, I think, the next two. But he did call plays those last 2 years, and he called plays at Duke. Mike Elko is a defensive coach, so he has different kinds of experiences, exposures, and I have to think that just a little bit of Big Ten background too is going to help Kirk, and it seems like he can adjust to what the head coach wants, and I assume that is also attractive to Kirk. That's why I feel like he moves to the top of the list for me right now.
Yeah, and then you look at his positional background and what he's coached. I mean, at Duke and Memphis, he coached quarterbacks. At Western Michigan, Indiana, he coached quarterbacks. He's also coached wide receivers. So, however Kirk wants to structure it, I mean, I think, without knowing him well, you'd probably want him to be with the quarterbacks as the OC. But if he's more comfortable with receivers, or you have somebody else you want there, at the quarterback position, that's fine. So, but he understands the passing game, and the passing game has been the problem. The running game, I think, is capable. The running game is capable of solving itself. Now that you have a left tackle, NFL left tackle, and you've got, I think 3 for sure capable running backs, but probably 5 or more, and and maybe that'll be less after spring ball. But I do think that they're capable of doing whatever they need to do in the running game. It's going to be a question of, if it's Kevin Johns, can he marry the system to what Kirk wants with what he can do, and how much leverage does he have? How much capability does he have to do more with it? I don't know. I really don't, but I think I would bet that Kirk at this stage of his career would give him fairly carte blanche on the passing game, as long as the tight ends are still included. That would be my guess. Yeah,
and anybody who watched Duke football early this year had to be pretty impressed with what Riley Leonard was doing at quarterback for the Blue Devils. They beat Clemson. I remember watching that game early in the season, first game, right? Unfortunately, Riley Leonard got hurt, and the offense declined, sort of like Iowa in a way, when the starter gets hurt. But if you if you peel off the numbers with Riley Leonard, it was good. And he did show an ability to kind of adjust when the quarterback was out. They didn't do great, but they didn't do terrible either. So he's kind of at least got that experience also. So I don't know. There's a lot for me to like. Again, I would say it would be a solid hire at this point. We'll see. We'll see what happens. What do you expect in terms of timeline, Scott?
Yeah, somebody hit me up last night that said that it's going to be, we're almost there. So, hopefully it's no later than like Monday, but I wouldn't be surprised if a hire is made by Friday, honestly. I feel like we can kind of like see the dawn now. It's like, okay, I think the sun's up there, maybe it's coming to come up, and it would be a good thing for everybody. I think just for the finality, the closure, because this has been something that's gone on for now, Chad, 3 months. But before that, really, we're talking multiple years of angst with the offense. And then, it was untenable the last 2 years under Brian Ferentz and for the fan base, and it was a struggle for us to watch it. And now we can kind of look forward instead of constantly just having this being shackled to this, anchor, of writing. Because every time we write about offense, Chad, well, it doesn't matter. It's you get these constant, you're like, I don't even know if I want to tweet this story. I certainly don't want to read the comments of The Athletic.
Yeah, exactly. Let's move to our final topic. I'm sure we'll have a lot more time to discuss the offensive coordinator. Maybe next week. We keep saying that, right? Maybe next week will be the show. We get to talk about him. Let's move on. I mean, it was another big week for the athletics department as Beth Goetz gets introduced. We did talk about that on last week's show, so we don't have to necessarily dive into too much here. But, Scott, it did feel like a significant day Tuesday as Beth Goetz kind of had a room full of support, wide range of support. Fran was there. Gary Barta was there. So many women's athletes were there. We saw Caitlin Clark on the video, like bring her, congratulatory, what was it, like balloons or roses or I can't
flowers,
remember. Flowers, yeah. So, boy, she sure comes into this with a lot of support right now. I feel like I wrote about that she kind of has that, popular political candidate, after he or she is elected and kind of has a lot of almost like, what do they call that? Political capital. She's riding high right now with support.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious that she has, the political, the critical mass of people behind her, both in the department and really in the community. I think people are excited to see her, her background aside, but just the way she's been able to conduct business that she's been on campus. She's been, bringing everybody under the tent. It's almost universal support, Chad. And that's really, when you look at coaches, even at a University of Iowa, it's not unlike dealing with teachers at an elementary school where, they'll argue and fight over everything. And right now she has almost unanimous support. And that's rare. And from the Olympic sports who, just appreciate that she's willing to have interest in there, go to the practices, watch them, go to their games, support them. And, I talked to Sasha Schmid, the women's tennis coach who played tennis at Iowa in the 90s, was very close to Christine Grant, decided to become go to law school, but then realized I love coaching too much. Was very close to Christine when she died, and she was like welling up with tears. And she's like, I wanted to make sure that these women 18 to 22 saw that anything is possible, and that is really important. We've seen so many gender equity issues and Title IX lawsuits, and I think that's not the sole reason, but it does kind of move on past that you think you'd be in a post or Title IX issue environment. But then also she's smart enough to realize that football is the straw that stirs the drink. And questions I think you asked about Brian Ferentz in particular and dealing with football and the OC and everything like that. That is a relationship that has to be there. Her, the athletic director and the football coach, because if that doesn't work, nothing works. So I think she's in a honeymoon period right now. It's fun to see, but I think she's realistic to understand that there are a lot of issues awaiting her, if not today, certainly in a couple months.
Yeah, she's 49 years old, so probably Gary Barta retired at 59. So I would say, I'd be shocked if she's not here another 10 years. I think she made that pretty clear in her final question. Well, I asked the final question, I think, or one of the last couple, and she said, "Yeah, this is like a destination job for me. This is I'm a Midwest kid. This is home to me, and I mean, it really is a pretty great place to work if you're an administrator, just because of the longevity and the support, and you have time to build things. But obviously, huge coaching hires ahead. You're going to replace the all-time winningest coach at football, men's basketball, and women's basketball almost for sure. I wouldn't. Next 5 years, probably in that time frame, it's probably not far off.
Yeah, when you look on the horizon, I think that's the mark that's going to define her tenure. I mean, because what do we ask about Bump Elliott, or what's the first thing we respond? Well, look at his hiring record. Hayden Fry, Lute Olson, Dan Gable, Tom Davis, George Raveling. Same thing with Christine Grant. Same thing even with Bob Bowlesby, that he hired Kirk. He also hired Steve Alford. Things like that. The coaching hires are the first things people mention. So she will absolutely have to have the list. I don't know if you have it on your computer now. It's not in the drawer written down, but because you got a 68-year-old football coach, a 64-year-old men's basketball coach, and a 62-year-old women's basketball coach, and she needs to figure out a lot of issues like, how do you get the fans engaged at Carver Hawkeye Arena for men's basketball? What does that mean for the leadership of that program? Kirk at 68, he'll be 69 before this season starts. How much longer is this going to be? I mean, she had to step in last year. She was part of it, whether she was the force, but she certainly was a major factor. And so she has to mix it up. She has to mix it up, and she's not afraid to do that. So I think, Reagan has those T-shirts. Beth gets it. I think that's perfect for this role. But after, I would say even before financial issues and going forward and dealing with the collective, is succession planning in those sports is probably number one.
No question about it. I've already got some ideas in men's basketball if there's a change there, but we'll get to that someday. Let's talk about a little hoops as we close out here, Scott. I guess we should probably do a little Harbaugh too, but let's start with hoops. Maybe we can finish with Harbaugh. The men lose last night to Maryland. Not a good loss. They've got 2 quad 3 home losses now. That's not good. Mm-hmm. If you want to be a bubble team, and there's really, I don't know, you just don't see a lot of hope out there right now for the men. We were both there last night. They're 8 games into the Big Ten season now. We're almost halfway there, and the schedule on the back end is really tough. So they got to make hay right now. There's no time. You can't lose a few more and say, hey, we'll get them, because you got a monster schedule at the end of this waiting for you.
The next 6 games will determine if they can even get to the bubble, because they're not even approaching the bubble at this point. They're 11-8 and they're 3-5 in the Big Ten. They've lost 2 home games, as you said, quad 3 teams. Maryland and Michigan, who are equal or less to them really in the standings, and so they've got to make sure that coming up, they go to Michigan, they go to Indiana, Ohio State at home, then at Penn State, Minnesota at home, and at Maryland. Out of that stretch, looking at the big picture, at minimum they got to go 4-2, and more than likely to me 5-1 to even get themselves into that position, because as you said, the last 6 games or so are not going to be easy. Looking at the team, Chad, what I like the pieces, and at times they play together and connected. I didn't think they played that way last night, and I think Owen Freeman getting bounced early for fouls, I think hurt him. But, it's just the lack of a go-to scorer playmaker on offense really is kind of driving them down a little bit.
Yeah, it's just people I don't know if they took them for granted, but Iowa was really spoiled. I'll say that the last many years with even going back to Devin Marble, Aaron White, Jared Uthoff. You had guys you knew you could score you some points. Tony Perkins probably the closest thing. I mean, and we talk about Luka Garza for National Player of the Year a couple years. You also had Jordan Bohannon, who was kind of a late game assassin. In addition to the first round picks, the Murrays, you got Joe Wieskamp in there. You just don't have that guy right now. And if it is Perkins, that's just not the same level as Keegan Murray or Luka Garza. So Peyton Sanford had a season low 6 points last night. I know he's getting a lot of heat, but he's streaky. He was streaky last year. He can catch fire. I certainly wouldn't lose faith in Peyton Sanford. I kind of thought he would probably be their leading scorer this year. He hasn't materialized yet, but anyway, we should talk about some women though, because there's a big game Saturday at Carver. It's Taylor Swift Day, 1:00 against Nebraska. Big rivalry game in Big Ten women. I mean, Nebraska really wants to beat Iowa in a bad way. They get 2 shots at them in the month of about in the next month or so. Exciting times for the women, but it's time for Hawkeye basketball to get a win now. There's 3 straight losses here.
Yeah, counting the men's and women's, you bet. If you're Nebraska, you're probably fearing this situation most of all. That now you have Iowa that's coming off a loss, and it's at home for Iowa, and it's Taylor Swift Day, so there's going to be all kinds of Swifties out there. All the little kids are going to be screaming and shouting too. So, if you wanted Iowa that was looking past you or lackadaisical, you're not going to get it. And there's lots of reasons to beat Nebraska. I think Caitlin Clark's seen some of the tweets too. So I think and it would be a nice day for her to drop 50. But overall, I mean, this is a team that the loss the other day. It was difficult for them, but I think like any situation now is what do they take from it? They're up 12 in the fourth quarter. They go to overtime. What did they struggle with? How do they make sure that doesn't happen again? And how do they move forward? I think this is an opportunity for them to really flex this weekend.
Agreed. It's definitely a bounce back spot. Not a good thing for Nebraska women probably, but we'll see. I still like the way this team is playing a lot. Molly Davis is playing at a different level this year. You can tell Hannah Stuelke, has all the tools to get there. Foul troubles hurt her a little bit, but you like how she's developed. Kate Martin has definitely become that number 2 kind of person right now in all facets. Gabby Marshall hitting her threes. Sydney Fulcher playing really well off the bench. And you're even getting little contributions here and there from Kylie Feuerbach, Addie O'Grady. That was nice to see the other day. From Addie had a couple buckets. And they got great coaches. I mean, Iowa has great coaches. They're going to keep them together. The thing that's still nagging at me a little bit though is just, how do they've just been in such a fishbowl for so long, and Scott, that's still 2.5 months almost to the Final Four. So they got this team is built the right way, and Caitlin's built the right way to handle it all, but still it's a lot of pressure every single night. And there's a lot of tough opposing arenas coming up. I mean, Maryland, Indiana, Nebraska coming up on the schedule, and that really would love to beat Iowa and hopefully not storm the court and injure Iowa's best player.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, Chad. Obviously the controversy afterwards, and you've got people like a Zapruder film here, breaking down how she pushed her arms out. She's running top speed trying to get off the floor, and somebody runs into her. Obviously, you're going to brace, so it's not like she's pushing, she's bracing. And I can't believe we've got to this aspect. We're trying to, talk about the best player in the country. And, oh, my God, she pushed somebody who was storming the court. One person's supposed to be there, one person isn't. And I guarantee she's not pushing. But I do think there has to be certain protections in place for, and that includes Carver Hawkeye Arena. If Iowa would have beaten Purdue. We've been there for court storms for men's basketball. You've got to protect the visiting team at all costs, and that may mean switching benches to where they are closer to the tunnel, in their locker room, something like that. But either way, yeah. I mean, what's their mindset? What's going to happen when they do lose another game? And maybe they get blown out on a road game. Maryland has done that frequently in the past. I don't know about this year; they're not quite as good, but Indiana could get them. Stuff like that. So, but they seem to be pretty resilient and they seem to respond well. So I'm not going to put it past them that they respond in fine fashion this week and do the same going forward.
Yeah, I did. Anybody who's watched Caitlin watches her, how she runs. She runs with her head down a little bit. I did a workout thing with her last May, and I had some video up, and even just by herself, she's running. When she runs, her head's kind of down. That's just how she runs. So she wasn't like, her head wasn't up like, oh, I'm going to, collide with this person. That's just how, if you don't have any context, that's just how she runs. She runs with her head down. She's hyper focused as an athlete, as you imagine. And so, I mean, obviously we know it's silly, and it's just, add to the silliness here on the Iowa media beats, but I did want to say that I thought the Big Ten's response was pretty weak. So like the first, the SEC will fine another team at $100,000 for a court storm, and they pay the other team.
Yeah,
the Big Ten begins with a private reprimand. Then the second offense is a public reprimand. So you're gonna, and then the third one's like still minor. I can't remember what it is, but like, come on, like that's the punishment, a private reprimand. So Ohio State got a private reprimand out of that, I guess. But at least they apologized to Caitlin.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Gene Smith is a classic guy. He's going to do that, and same thing with the coaching staff there, and that's understandable. I mean, because the thing I do like is that at least in the Big Ten they let you enjoy the moment. We've been there for football, the Penn State game and all that stuff. The only thing I really think needs to be discussed about it is you need to have a pathway, whether it's through security or whatever, ropes, something to make sure that the visiting team can get off the court or off the field, safely. That's really it to me. I think this is. Otherwise, I don't care. I'm glad that they're celebrating. It means that what it means is that victory means something. It's big, and it's just and Iowa lost, but to have top out at like 3.6 million viewers on NBC leading into an NFL divisional playoff game. That's huge. That's huge for the sport, and it's great publicity for both teams.
So, man, the two national title teams in football. Both coming, both Big Ten teams as of next year. Neither coach is going to be on the field next year in the Big Ten conference. With of course, Kalen DeBoer goes to Alabama. We knew that, but Jim Harbaugh is a Los Angeles Charger now. Scott, we think Sharon Moore is probably going to get that head job for Michigan. It seems like he's like the heavy favorite I've seen tweeted. So. Don't expect a lot of transfer portal activity if he gets hired quickly. But any thoughts on Jim Harbaugh leaving the Big Ten?
It was expected. I think we all kind of knew that this was the path he was going. He was suspended twice, missed 6 total games this year. But he did win a national championship for the Big Ten Conference, and he did it for Michigan, which had been 26 years removed from winning a championship. That in itself is important. He was a lightning rod for controversy and for throughout his whole entire career, whether it was silly stuff in retrospect like satellite camps or taking his team to Europe during spring break, but to the Connor Stallion Spygate stuff. But overall, he was an impactful coach, a very good one, and I wouldn't be surprised if within the next 3 to 4 years that the LA Chargers win the Super Bowl.
Nice hot take there, Scott. Well done. Well. Anyway, thanks for a great show, my friend. I'll see you. Will I see you Saturday at the women's game?
I'll be there Saturday.
All right, sounds good. My daughter's going. First time she's seen Caitlin Clark in person, so she's really excited.
Yeah, well, as everybody should be, because we don't know what the future holds, Chad, for her, but this is special, and I think we all recognize that, and I'm glad your daughter will get a chance to watch her play.
Absolutely. For Scott Dochterman, this is Chad Leistikow. Maybe we'll talk offensive coordinator next week. Thanks for tuning in to Legends and Listeners from the Channel Seed Studios. Talk to you again next Thursday right here on the Iowa Everywhere Network.